The Inheritors are Morlin's crew and family. The clan Morlin himself is also a part of. They're a powerful energy vampire clan which hunt down various totems and consume them. Because yeah, there aren't just spider totems out there apparently. I want to know though, are there anteater totems, and can I be one? Please write me into a comic as an anteater totem. Someone, please. Spider totems, for those who don't know, are spider folks from across the multiverse who are basically destined to end up being connected to the spirit of the spider, either possessing powers related to the spider or some other important connection which generally gives them purpose. The Inheritors ended up getting control over the Master Weaver and used their knowledge and power to traverse the multiverse and hunt down spider totems within it. The Inheritors are generally led by Solus or Morlin, and the clan has included Verna, Genix, Karn, Bora, Brix, Dara, Deimos, Malos, Mortia, Nemura, and Thanos. And friends, before we move on to our next spot on this list, if you love what we do here at Top 10 Nerd, why not show us you love us by clicking that like button? Seriously, it feeds the algorithm and it feeds my soul. Number 9. Miriam Drew, or rather, a bunch of Miriam's Drews. Many of them. An army of them. A clone army of Miriam Drews. Who was Miriam Drew, you might be asking? Jessica Drew's mother. In the previous Spider-Woman series by Carlo Pacheco and Pere Perez, Jessica had to face off against a bunch of her mom's clones, after learning that the woman whose base she was in wasn't really her mother but instead a clone of her. After watching her mom go from loving and considerate, seemingly having missed her daughter, to violent and aggressive, blaming Jessica for basically everything that had gone wrong in her life, Jessica then basically had to fight off an entire army of her mom's clones, ultimately. Like Jess at the time, her clone moms were also juicin', which also made them scary foes to face both in form and in power. If you don't believe me, read the series. Number 8. Zodiac. Zodiac is a blast from the past. He was a villain who was first introduced in 2010, but only recently reappeared in the comics, pledging to become Moon Knight's sworn nemesis. A very different vibe from Raul Bushman, honestly. Zodiac reminds me more of Joker or Deadpool when it comes to his antics. He's both brilliant, but also criminally insane. But it is his penchant for creative and deadly thinking that makes him honestly so dangerous. Like when he took on Moon Knight's ally, Reese, a vampire, not with a cross around his neck, but instead wearing his own name around his neck, as he clarified that it actually wasn't the cross vampires were weak to, it was faith, and Zodiac believes devoutly in only one thing: Zodiac. Number 7. Tyler Stone. Alchemax is a future villainous corporation from the 2099 Marvel Universe of Earth 928, but of course a corporation is only ever as evil as the people behind it. One of which is of course Tyler Stone, the vice president of Alchemax's R&D department. Tyler Stone is not only VP of Research and Development at Alchemax, but he is also secretly Miguel O'Hara's, aka Spider-Man 2099's, biological father. Miguel doesn't learn until later on that he is Stone's son, and ends up working for Alchemax as a brilliant geneticist. When he tries to leave, however, it is Stone who slips him the highly addictive and expensive substance Rapture, made exclusively by Alchemax, to prevent him from leaving. Fortunately, Miguel manages to free himself by becoming his own experimental test subject, accidentally becoming the spider-like hero, Spider-Man 2099. Number 6. Zombie Ant-Man. In the Marvel Zombies world, Black Panther was one of the sole survivors when the zombies first attacked, and turned most of his friends into zombified versions of themselves. One such former friend, Hank Pym, actually just managed to trick T'Challa into coming with him. Or well, he almost did. Either way, Hank managed to trick T'Challa enough to get him to a place where he could basically incapacitate him and then hide him away. Having already begun to change himself, Hank basically planned to use Black Panther, his friend, as a food source. Because Hank is a genius, which means when he's a zombie, he's a really dangerous genius. Hank kept him locked away and alive while slowly savoring and devouring his friend. Fortunately, Black Panther would escape and even become the leader of a land of survivors, although he would eventually turn into a zombie himself, much later on. But lesson learned, watch out for zombie Hank Pym if there's a zombie apocalypse. Number 5. Taskmaster. In the comics, Tony Masters is Taskmaster, and he is well known as an Avengers villain. And it is through his clashes with that team that Taskmaster also became a recurring villain of Hawkeye as well. Now, you might not know it to just look at Taskmaster, but the two have had some pretty epic fights over the years, with Masters himself also possessing marksmanship skills to rival that of, get this, Hawkeye himself, and also being known as a villain who is proficient with the use of a bow and trick arrows. In the comics, Taskmaster has an eidetic memory, or a photographic memory, that also extends to him being able to replicate pretty much any abilities or skill sets that he sees. So while he can also mimic Hawkeye's skills and abilities, he can also match the fighting style of pretty much anyone he watches, as well as learn their specific skill set too just from watching it, as long as it isn't a superpower specific skill like, you know, flying. Taskmaster is also known for being a brilliant tactician as a mercenary, and often uses strategic thinking to take down opponents who are more powerful than him, which is why he's one you honestly need to watch out for. Number 4. Xemnu. Xemnu is also known as the Living Hulk, and is a being that uses hypnosis powers to take control of others' minds. On more than one occasion, he has attempted to use these powers to try and conquer Earth and bend the minds of its entire populace to his will. In fact, while he's also attempted this feat in the pages of Immortal Hulk, this was also something he tried in his very first appearance. Back then he was trying to mind control the human race in order to get them to build a ship to basically return him home. Doesn't sound like such an evil plan until you realize the force that the ship would have to create would basically rip the Earth asunder once that ship took off, due to the great force that it would need for that launch, so pretty evil. Number 3. High Evolutionary. As we saw in Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, the High Evolutionary is truly a villain to be feared. And honestly, when I found out that the High Evolutionary was going to be in the MCU, I was like, man, that's gonna be lame, because on paper, he's another kind of silly character, especially when you consider that he's often used as a scapegoat for retcons, bizarre origins, and honestly pretty weird plot points. The fact remains though, the High Evolutionary, as the film proves, is truly the be-all and end-all of Marvel's mad science department, and the god complex he has in the MCU basically sums up so beautifully what is so frightening about him when you really think about it. He thinks he's perfecting life, when really he's basically warping and polluting it. Number 2. Thane. Thane is Thanos' son, and while he might not look that intimidating, he's definitely proven himself to be deadly in the past. Initially, Thanos was hunting down Thane because he feared Thane's potential power surmounting his own. He's basically afraid that Thane will rise up and overtake him, but in the end this wasn't something that Thanos really had to be particularly afraid of, it turned out. Even after he became empowered with the Phoenix Force, Thanos still managed to somehow defeat Thane, and this was also at a point when Thanos seemed himself to kind of be dying. Thane ended up being stripped of the Phoenix Force and ended up sentenced to suffering a hell-like existence in the God Quarry for the rest of his life. Or at least until some writer remembers he's still down there and decides to pull him back up again. Thane was also an Inhuman, and his powers are actually perfect for someone who is known to be Thanos' son, and are also pretty OP, I gotta say. He had a death touch ability that, while untamed, basically killed anyone within a certain radius, and he could also trap people in a state of living death through encasing them in amber, which honestly sounds awful. Honestly, while he's in prison for now, I'd watch out whenever he gets out of that God Quarry and is free again. Number 1. Monarch. I feel like we're always sleeping somewhat on Jamie Braddock here, and we honestly don't talk about him enough, so I'm gonna bump him up to the top spot this time around. Monarch to you. Monarch is known for his reality warping powers, and while not always a villain, most of the time in the comics he has basically been a villain. What makes him different from other reality warping characters, and namely mutants out there? Monarch's powers work on a quantum level, and although there are people who can influence Monarch's powers by manipulating his mind, he also is pretty powerful as someone who can basically just make things happen by thinking them into existence. Yeah. He is the elder brother of twins Brian and Elizabeth Braddock, but despite being related to heroes, he seldom is one himself.
In a 10 Green Goblin. In his pursuit for ultimate power, Norman Osborn devised a plan to unite all of New York's independent gangs under his leadership, aiming to establish himself as the most formidable gang lord in the city. To assert his dominance and gain notoriety, he targeted Spider-Man as his chosen victim and dispatched two criminals, Scorcher and the Headsman, to eliminate the web slinger. Their failure, though, led Osborn to adopt a persona reminiscent of a childhood nightmare, transforming into the Green Goblin. However, the chemicals that he used caused the Green Goblin to become a separate entity within Osborn's mind. As Norman's memories resurfaced, the Green Goblin persona sought to dominate him and defeat Spider-Man once and for all, this time employing a bomb filled with gas that nullified the hero's wall-crawling ability. However, Spider-Man outsmarted the Green Goblin again by leading him to a hospital room that had Norman's son, who was suffering from an overdose. Confronted with the dire consequences of his actions, Norman regained his sanity and returned to his normal state temporarily, but of course, you can't get rid of the Green Goblin. You can't kill what's already dead. In at 9, Dr. Doom. Victor Von Doom, also known as Dr. Doom, is a Latverian politician and the ruler of the Kingdom of Latveria. He conceals his scarred face behind an iron mask and armor, and is renowned for his unparalleled intellect and scientific prowess. Doom is considered one of the brightest minds on Earth. In addition to his scientific abilities, he possesses formidable skills in sorcery, placing him among the most powerful magic users in the universe. So, I mean, with a slight caveat, I'll talk about that in a second. With ambitions of bringing order to humanity through world domination, of course, Doom had clashed with superheroes and cosmic entities alike. He is most notably recognized as the nemesis of Reed Richards and the archenemy of the Fantastic Four, which is probably where he's getting the street level title, and his initial encounter with the team involved capturing Sue Storm and coercing the others to retrieve the mystical stones of Merlin through time travel. He later manipulated Namor into joining forces with him in an attempt to destroy the Fantastic Four, but then, after sacrificing the reanimated body of his first love that he was using as a familiar, Doom gets her skin as his new armor, along with stronger magical powers, which he then uses to neutralize the Fantastic Four. Eventually, though, Reed ends up taunting Doom enough for him to anger the demons that he made a deal with to get the skin armor, which that's actually a thing. He was wearing the skin of his dead lover as armor, and as a consequence of angering those demons, Doom is taken to hell. This is not even a joke. This was an actual story, okay? And you all thought that Iron Man Jr. in the MCU was a weird storyline. Okay, at least Peter didn't have to go to hell. Speaking of Spider-Man, in at 8, Mysterio. From a young age, Quentin Beck developed a passion for movies and special effects, fostering a close bond with his cousin Maguire Beck. Quentin's father may not have been successful, but Maguire's father supported Quentin's interests by giving him his first movie camera. With this camera, Quentin began making his own home movies and honing his skills in stop-motion special effects. As he grew older, Quentin became both an accomplished special effects expert and a skilled stuntsman. However, he grew frustrated with the lack of recognition that he was getting for his work. Desperate for fame, Quentin found inspiration when a co-worker jokingly suggested that he use his expertise in special effects to become a costumed villain and take down Spider-Man. The suggestion sparked an idea in Quentin's mind, pushing him down the path of becoming an infamous villain that he had always wanted to be. I have him on this list mostly because I wanted to be a special effects artist. I used to do stop motion videos. I got a camera and I started making really bad effect videos. This is basically me, except my name is not Quentin Beck, and I'm also not currently a supervillain, although I am probably going through my origin story right now. In at 7, Kingpin. The early life of the Kingpin, Wilson Fisk, remains shrouded in mystery. He's described himself as an unpopular and overweight child who later dedicated himself to bodybuilding, but that's yet to be really solidly confirmed. Growing up in poverty though, Fisk claims that his father was an addict, and that he committed his first kill at the age of 12. Fisk was driven to excel in everything that he pursued, believing that physical strength was crucial for gaining power in the criminal underworld. He extensively trained in various forms of combat and bodybuilding, focusing on sumo wrestling, and his interest in these things would shape other aspects of his life. Despite limited formal education, Fisk became self-taught, miraculously consuming books on various subjects with a particular fascination for political science. Recognizing the significance of intelligence, Fisk realized that using political techniques could help him organize and lead a criminal enterprise. And by the age of 15, his adeptness at administration and organization earned him the moniker Kingpin of Crime, where at 15, I was trying to remember where I put my phone, for God's sakes. I would not be able to be organized, let alone run a criminal empire, which is why I'm on YouTube and not Wall Street. Ha! And at 6, Rhino. Alexei, also known as Rhino, possesses a powerful armor that permanently was fused with his body. Resembling the hide of a rhinoceros, the scientists Igor and Grigory designed the armor based on a rhino's evolutionary traits for armored assault. Rhino's initial mission was to kidnap astronaut John Jameson, but he later turned on his employers and embarked on his own agenda. Spider-Man realized that Rhino had limitations in changing direction once he started charging, and exploited his lack of intelligence. Using his technical skills and agility, Spider-Man could defeat Rhino on various occasions, but sent him to a specialized correctional hospital where he was kept heavily sedated. Eventually, he ends up getting the skin dissolved, I'm pretty sure. Then he ends up getting the robot one that we also see in the Spider-Man PS4 game, and then in Miles Morales. But still, dude's a freaking Rhino, okay? That you can't really get more than street when you're a Rhino who's dumb and can only run in a straight line after you start charging. You can't really do more than that. You ain't gonna be fighting the Watcher, okay? Sorry, but it's true. Halfway through into number 5, MODOK. George Tarleton, also known as MODOK, the mental organism designed only for killing, was a technician working for AIM when he was transformed into a human computer by the Scientist Supreme. Yeah, I know, Sorcerer Supreme, Scientist Supreme. Come on, where's the Nachos Supreme? Where's the Fries Supreme? I want to know. I'm hungry, okay? I haven't had breakfast today. Relax. His brain was enlarged to grant him superhuman intellect, but his frail body couldn't handle the massive cranium, leading him to be confined to a life support unit called the Doomsday Chair. This process also bestowed him with psychic powers, fueling his ambition and ego. MODOK seized control of AIM and clashed with Captain America when he attempted to rescue Sharon Carter, and in the ensuing battle, AIM turned against MODOK and they all tried to escape. He initiated a self-destruct sequence, leaving them with only moments to escape the impending explosion, but a bigger brain doesn't mean that you're smarter. That's not how that works. If your brain gets bigger, you should see a doctor, okay? That's like an aneurysm or a tumor or something. Intelligence isn't the size of your brain. It's the wrinkles, I'm pretty sure. And if you like what we're doing here, also call a doctor. And also like and subscribe. In at 4, Red Skull. Upon becoming inspired by the Bellboy's loyalty, you're gonna censor it anyway, might as well say it fun, decided to mold him into the ideal German soldier and his right-hand man. Eager to comply with his superior's wishes, the bellboy, Johann Schmidt, accepted the offer. Initially, his leader subordinates attempted to train Schmidt as a regular soldier, which enraged his, let's call him his dad, even though he's not his dad, but I mean, I could say it, but people here don't want me to say it. Let's just say dad. That enraged his dad, which had a different vision in mind. Taking matters into his own hands, his dad personally oversaw Schmidt's training, providing him with a lifelike Red Skull-esque mask and calling him the Red Skull. The Red Skull became solely accountable to his dad and embarked on various missions that involved spreading terror, particularly in the United States before its entry into World War II. To counter the Red Skull's actions, the United States government created the persona of Captain America, who would become the Red Skull's main adversary in their ongoing conflict. But I think you know who I'm talking about when I say dad. Getting close to the end of number 3, Taskmaster. Tony Masters possesses the unique ability to replicate any observed movement, allowing him to learn various skills rapidly throughout his life. As a child, he quickly mimicked actions such as diving and mastering sports techniques that he was seeing on TV, and therefore joined S.H.I.E.L.D. as an adult. Tony's life took a turn though when he encountered a dying scientist who provided him with a syringe containing a German soldier's version of the super soldier serum that Captain America had. Injecting himself with the serum, Tony gained additional powers but suffered memory loss as his new abilities overwrote his personal recollections. His wife and partner, Mercedes Masters, devised a system to control and guide him as Taskmaster, utilizing muscle memory and reflexive tasks. Mercedes also kind of served as his handler, helping him to stay focused despite his continually changing memory. Taskmaster's past with S.H.I.E.L.D. and his personal connections, including his relationship with Mercedes, become a distant to him, and his new persona kind of took precedence, which is why he becomes evil. But also, being able to look at someone and recreate their abilities or whatever would be so freaking sick. I mean, I would probably also end up using it for evil, but I mean, come on. That would be great. But ultimately, in number 2, Ultron. Ultron is just, he's a dude, and like, or he's not a dude, he's a robot, but like, he's just a robot dude who doesn't really do much more. I mean, he definitely can, but he was still listed on the wiki as a street level, so there you go, okay? You know the story of Ultron. We're not gonna talk about the one that fights the Watcher after gaining all the Infinity Stones, because that's definitely not street level. But hey, normal Ultron, yeah, that's pretty street level. Not Allmaker Ultron, I'm pretty sure that's one of his names. None of those, okay? Just the normal Ultron that was like corrupt Jarvis, that's street level. And you know what? He probably was just made out of a lamppost. And finally, in number 1, Carnage. Same reasons as Venom, kind of. I mean, like the fact that he's not really trying to destroy literally the galaxy is probably why he's considered to be a street level, despite also technically coming from space, because he's the spawn of Venom. But also he merged with Cletus Cassidy, who was a serial killer. So yeah, after doing that, you're not really gonna want to do much else other than just kill people. So yeah, that's kind of it. A symbiote bonded with a psychopath who just wants to harm Earth, so you're not really gonna get much higher than the streets that you are literally turning red.
Number 10, Dazzler. Starting off our list today, we have Allison Blair, a mutant who dreamed of becoming a singer one day, but unfortunately, her dad wasn't too on board with that. She manifested her powers one day while performing at a junior high dance, blinding everyone in sight minus herself. If you're not familiar with this character, then you're probably a little confused, so let me explain. Allison possesses some pretty cool abilities known as sound conversion and light projection. Sound conversion allows her to absorb these sounds around her and either release them back out in a big energy blast, or use them for a makeshift echolocation that has proved to be pretty effective if I do say so myself. And then light projection allows her to control the energy levels of the outer electron shells of her body in such a way that causes the release of photons. And by doing this, she can blind her opponents, shoot lasers, photon blasts, create holograms, and so much more. Now aside from these two powers, she also seems to be basically immortal because she has this mysterious resurrection factor that prevents her from dying by any normal means. Check out her story for yourself, starting with her first appearance in 1980's X-Men number 130. Number 9, Starbrand. The Starbrand may be an object, but were you aware that there is also a hero that goes by that name as well? On Earth 148,611, Ken Connell received the Starbrand from a mysterious old man he met in the woods. With the Starbrand equipped, he gained pretty much limitless powers, including super strength, flight, near invulnerability, and a couple more. Ken strived to use his powers for good, but often was thwarted by his own shortcomings and the harsh realities of the real world. But that didn't stop him, and eventually he decided to become a much more traditional superhero by donning the spandex suit and mask. Despite his intelligence, Ken was never really able to harness the full power of the Starbrand because he lacked the imagination and curiosity needed. However, that didn't stop him from causing some serious damage. Literally. After learning the supposed origins of the Starbrand, he killed hundreds of people at a comic book convention and unintentionally destroyed all of Pittsburgh, leading him to believe that he might be better off without his powers, and I think we all kind of agree. Give his story a read for yourself, starting with his first appearance in 1986's Starbrand, number 1. Number 8, Namor. The first Marvel character to have a history that spawns over 70 years of publication, Namor Mackenzie, aka the Submariner, is certainly a strong and resourceful character in the Marvel Universe. Thanks to his unique genetic makeup being a human/Atlantean/mutant hybrid, he possesses a pretty crazy arsenal of powers, including super strength, speed, stamina, and durability, flight, healing, and hydrokinesis. Namor is stronger and tougher than most any human or Atlantean. He can go toe-to-toe with some of the strongest beings on Earth and come out unscathed, especially when underwater or covered in water, which increases his strength by extreme degrees. Namor has telepathic abilities from his Atlantean heritage that allows him to communicate and command not only sea life, but also fellow Atlantean soldiers, if need be. Namor also has a much longer lifespan than a human and shows very little signs of aging despite being born many decades ago. We've seen Namor as a member of the X-Men Red Team, the Defenders of the Deep, the Invaders, the Avengers, the Fantastic Four, and that's not even half of the team that he's been on. Like I said, he's been around for a very long time. Now if you're not familiar with this character, then you are truly missing out, so check him out in his first appearance in 1939's Motion Picture Funnies Weekly, number 1. Number 7, Spectrum. Monica Rambeau gained her powers one day while working for the New Orleans Harbor Police when she was exposed to and bombarded by extra-dimensional energy. Now classified as an alpha-level threat, she uses her newfound energy form to create energy blasts, alter her appearance, fly, and just a whole lot more. Given the name Captain Marvel by the media, she became friends with many superpowered folks early on and actually served as an Avenger for a period of time. becoming its leader at one point. However, she was forced to step down from the group after many injuries. Out of respect for Genus Vell, the son of the original Captain Marvel, she changed her name to Photon so that he could take up the mantle and carry on his father's legacy. Fast forward a little bit past her time with the Mighty Avengers, we see Monica, now known as Spectrum, join the newly formed Ultimates. However, after the second superhuman civil war, the team was disbanded by the government because of the way they dealt with conflict. They did later reassemble to investigate Eternity at the request of Galactus, and eventually the team was combined into Alpha Flight, and they were working to keep people safe to this day. If you want to know more about Monica's origin story, check her out in her first appearance in 1982's Amazing Spider-Man Annual number 16. Number 6. Legion. David Haller, son of Charles Xavier, who Charles actually didn't know about until he founded the New Mutants. Born a mutant, David developed his powers after his home was invaded and his stepfather was killed right in front of him. He woke the latent psionic powers within himself and incinerated the brains of the assassins. However, there was a major drawback to this power. David formed a telepathic bond with his victims, experiencing their emotions and thoughts as they died, and this traumatized him and still seems to affect him to this day. Interestingly enough, David is capable of creating new mutations and powers all the time, and in order to cope with that immense power, he creates new personalities / personas to govern them. Some of the most well known being personality number 5, the Legion, personality 3, Jack Wayne, personality 4, Cindy, and of course personality 2, Jamel Karami, who attempted to restructure David's psyche into his own image. Now you're probably thinking he's a little low on this list considering he has at least 200 plus powers at his disposal, and you would be absolutely right. But he is slightly below average in just about everything else, and also the fact that his dissociative personality disorder hindered him greatly. Check him out for yourself in his first appearance in 1985's New Mutants number 26, and let me know if you agree with the placement on this list today in the comments below. Number 5. Clayton Cortez was a Marine who was sold off to Dr. Alba, the head of the Weapon X Batch 8 division, focused on creating some Hulk-Wolverine hybrids. Alba left more of Cortez's brain in with the intention to better train him and discipline him, and from there Weapon H was born. As a newly created mutant / gamma mutate cyborg, he has the DNA of Wolverine, the Hulk, and a multitude of other superpowered beings grafted to him. Not to mention his bones have been bonded with adamantium. He possesses the ability to change back and forth between his human and Hulk form, and he has retractable bone claws, projectile claws, and even extendable bone claws as well. Basically, Cortez is an advanced Wolverine with the powers of the Hulk. We've seen him easily take down the Hulk, the Wendigo, and a few more of our other favorite heroes and villains. According to Dr. Alba herself, it is said that Weapon H could easily kill every living being on Earth, and seriously, I believe her. Check him out for yourself, starting with 2017's Totally Awesome Hulk, number 21. Number 4. Sync. Everett Thomas was a mutant from Missouri possessing an ability known as synchronicity. This ability allows him to quote-unquote be in sync with the other superhumans in his immediate vicinity, and thanks to this he is able to gain and use whatever powers they have. This is all done through the aura that he emits, as it is what absorbs the energy around him. After the Phalanx crisis, Everett and the other youths were all relocated to the Massachusetts Academy, where they were trained to use their powers, received a formal education, and acted as the new generation of X-Men known as Generation X. He was briefly turned into a parasitic mutant by the team's arch nemesis Emplit, who wanted to destroy Sync's happy family life. Under Emplit's influence, Sync menaced his family and friends until M, who he had difficulty syncing with, was able to defeat him. Skip ahead a bit and we see Sync find a bomb, and there were human students nearby. Everett synced with the nearest mutant, Monet. However, Monet was too far away, so he only received a portion of her powers, which happened to be her super strength. Using all of his might, he threw the human kids out the window, saving them from the explosion, but sadly, he was not able to save himself, dying to save his human peers. He does come back though, so don't worry. Check him out for yourself, starting with his first appearance in 1994's X-Men Volume 2, number 36. Number 3. Rogue. Easily one of the most well-known X-Men out there, Rogue is a mutant that was born with an incredible ability, albeit a harmful and involuntary one. She has the ability to absorb the powers, energy, memories, knowledge, talents, personality, and physical abilities of another human being, be them mutant or not, through physical skin-to-skin contact. This transfer is usually temporary, lasting for a period of time relative to how long contact was maintained, but the transfer may become permanent in certain cases, like how it seems she still has the powers of Wonder Man, or how she permanently absorbed Ms. Marvel and Sunfire's powers. You probably already know, but this power was pretty tough to control at first, and that deterred her away from any sort of romantic and physical touch. But eventually she learned to fully control her powers and married Gambit. Funnily enough, despite being known as a member of the X-Men, she was initially raised as a villain by Mystique and the Brotherhood of Evil, but she eventually reformed and turned to the X-Men. Throughout her publication, she has taken on the likes of the Dazzler, Miss Marvel, Captain America, Thor, Nimrod, and Amplet, and the fact that she's still around to tell the tale just speaks volumes about her power. Check her out, starting with her first appearance in 1981's Avengers Annual, number 10. Number 2, Jack of Hearts. Real name Jonathan Hart, aka Jack Hart, the Jack of Hearts is the son of the scientist Philip Hart and an alien from the Contraxian race. However, he was unaware that his mother was an alien for most of his life. When Hart was a teenager, his father was murdered right in front of him, and in an attempt to hide from the killers, he was covered in a powerful chemical known as the Zero Fluid, and this mutated his body and gave him the powers he has today. From that point on, he was able to create powerful beams of energy from his body, and by further harnessing and honing his skills, he is able to fly. Not to mention, he also has super strength, stamina, and durability, and an accelerated healing factor. In an attempt to control his powers, Jack of Hearts built a containment suit that resembled the Jack of Hearts playing card. The lack of control became a very recurring theme with Jack of Hearts, including his stint in the Avengers where he had to spend 14 hours a day in a containment room to prevent self-destruction. When his powers became uncontrollable, he chose to finally leave Earth, exploding in space without harming any innocent bystanders. He does eventually return though in Avengers Disassembled and in the Marvel Zombie miniseries, so don't worry too much. Give his story a read for yourself, starting with 1976's Deadly Hands of Kung Fu, number 22. And number 1, Blue Marvel. Adam Brashear, aka Blue Marvel, was known as a child prodigy from a very early age, and has PhDs in electrical engineering and theoretical physics. After serving his time in the Korean War, Adam joined and led a project attempting to harness antimatter by creating a negative reactor. But there was an unexpected explosion, and both he and Connor Sims were exposed to radiation. Sims wasn't too lucky and his whole body disassembled, but Adam was able to become a stable antimatter reactor and develop some pretty sweet powers. As Blue Marvel, he possesses super strength, can manipulate antimatter into energy blast, can fly, is pretty much invulnerable, and is pretty much immortal as well, as he ages much slower than normal humans. As a part of the Mighty Avengers, both the 1970s version and the one led by Luke Cage, and the Ultimate, we have seen Blue Marvel go up against the likes of the Deathwalkers, King Hyperion, and one time he even flew directly through Shumagorath's head. He has also been seen to withstand the blast of a hydrogen and nuclear bomb, and able to withstand blows from Captain Marvel, so yeah, he deserves the top spot today. Check him out for yourself, starting with 2009's Adam, Legend of the Blue Marvel, number 1. Number 10, Hawkeye. Now I know what you're thinking, Hawkeye is basically the Aquaman of the Marvel world because everyone just kind of brushes him off, you know? But trust me when I say that he is a lot better than you think. Although Clint Barton doesn't actually possess any superpowers, he has always been a major asset to the Avengers or whatever team he's on, honestly. Clint is a master archer, specializing in any type of bow imaginable thanks to years of training, and he's capable of firing multiple arrows at a single target in a few seconds, hitting multiple targets in just a few quick strokes, and directly hit small targets in the greatest of distances. Not only that, but he is in peak physical condition for a human, has extraordinary eyesight, is an expert acrobat, and a master at many martial arts. As a part of multiple iterations of the Avengers, S.H.I.E.L.D., the Thunderbolts, and so many more, Clint has helped take down some of the biggest and baddest enemies in the Marvel Universe, despite being a fairly average dude. There's so much more to this character that meets the eye, and I truly feel like he doesn't get all the credit that he's due, so check out his story for yourself, starting with his first appearance in 1964's Tales of Suspense, number 57. Number 9, Catherine Pryde. Catherine Kitty Pryde was leading the normal life of an extremely gifted 13-year-old girl in Deerfield, Illinois, when she began suffering increasingly intense headaches. Little did she know that the headaches were actually a result of Kitty's mutant powers emerging, which is the ability to pass through solid matter. Professor X soon after located her and sought to recruit her as a new member of the X-Men, and she eventually received permission from her parents to join the mutant team. The youngest person to join the X-Men, she was first portrayed as a kid sister to many older members of the group, filling the role of literary foil to the more established characters. She occasionally used the codename Sprite and Ariel, cycling through several uniforms until settling for her trademark black and gold costume. Thanks to her training with the X-Men, she was able to further develop her powers to make them even more useful, as she is now able to use her phasing ability to phase alongside other people, phasing the entire X-Men team once. She can also camouflage herself, and after having her potential released by the Black Vortex, she was resistant to telepathic effects. Despite this immense power, she is low on this list today because she is unable to breathe while phasing, and in order to phase through an object, she has to know it's coming, which has been exploited many times. Take a look at her powers for yourself, starting with her first appearance in 1980's X-Men number 129. Number 8, Nightcrawler. The son of Mystique and the demon Azazel, Kurt Wagner was never legally adopted by anyone, but was raised within the circus. He grew up in Max Getman's circus, and his two closest friends were his quote-unquote adopted brother and sister, Stefan and Jermaine Sardos. Kurt and Stefan forged a true friendship as they grew older, and Stefan knew that his magical heritage might lure him to evil one day, so Stefan had Kurt promise him a blood oath, that if he ever killed without reason, Kurt would kill him as well. Long before his teleportation power emerged, Wagner had tremendous natural agility, and by adolescence he had become the circus's star acrobatic and aerial artist. He also possesses superhuman agility, the ability to teleport, and adhesive hands and feet. His physical mutations include indigo-colored velvety fur, which allows him to become nearly invisible in shadows, two-toed feet, and three-fingered hands. Also yellowed eyes, pointed ears, and a prehensile tail. He is also immortal due to him sacrificing his soul, which means there are no natural means of killing him anymore. In Nightcrawler's earlier comic book appearances, he's depicted as being a happy-go-lucky practical joker and teaser, and a fan of swashbuckling fiction. Nightcrawler is also a Catholic, and while that's not really emphasized as much as in his earlier comic book appearances, in later depictions Nightcrawler is more vocal about his faith. As a member of the X-Men and founding member of Excalibur, we have seen Nightcrawler use his abilities in unique and clever ways to battle Spider-Man, the Punisher, Jigsaw, Cutthroat, and so many more. Take a look at Kurt for yourself, starting with 1975's giant-sized X-Men number 1. Number 7. Jubilee. Born and raised in Beverly Hills, California, Jubilation Lee lived a pretty great life, honestly. Attended an exclusive school, and was believed to have potential to go to the Olympics for gymnastics. After one terrible night though, Lee lost both her parents and all of the family money, leaving her all alone. She was sent to an orphanage not long after, but ran away and hid in a Hollywood shopping mall, stealing food as much as she could to survive. Jubilee first discovered her mutant power to generate blinding and explosive energy fireworks while running away from mall security. The stress of running away from the security guards caused her to emit a large light energy blast while in a back alley, while completely disorienting the man and creating an opening for her to escape. Upon learning about her mutant ability to create fireworks, Jubilee realized she could earn money by using her powers to entertain customers and visitors in the mall, and that's exactly what she did for a while. Now after the Reavers took over the X-Men base and captured Wolverine, Jubilee helped free him and escape, and the two quickly formed a familial bond through a father-daughter type relationship, and this was pretty much her introduction as a member of the X-Men. Now obviously there is a lot more to her story, but I will let you figure out exactly what that is for yourself. Now I briefly mentioned her powers before, but to go into a little bit more detail, Jubilee is capable of luminate kinetic explosive light blasting, which she has dubbed fireworks, and these can be used in many forms and for offensive or defensive purposes, such as hitting someone dead on or just blinding an enemy to escape. Check out her skills for yourself in her first appearance in 1989's Uncanny X-Men number 244. Number 6. Wonder Man. One of the Avengers' more troubled team members, Simon Williams. Simon inherited his father's company, Williams Innovations, and ended up running it into the ground with the help of competition from Stark Industries. He was later then arrested for embezzling funds from the company, giving him a bitter hatred for Iron Man that was then leveraged by the supervillain Baron Zemo in a plan against the Avengers. After being given powers by Zemo, however, Simon betrays him and chooses to fight alongside the team he once fought against, the Avengers. The exact nature of his powers isn't always clear, but regardless, this energy gives his body a massive power-up beyond the capability of normal humans, one of the powers being, of course, super strength. Wonder Man's strength is said to be on par with Thor and possibly even Sentry. I mean, he was literally able to knock Thor out once with a single punch, and this is a result of experiments by Zemo. Wonder Man is also imbued with ionic energy, giving him super stamina, speed, and agility, and also flight and superhuman reflexes, as well as making him pretty much indestructible. Wonder Man can also absorb various forms of energy, including antimatter, and is able to project powerful energy blasts at will, and can even exist as pure energy if he wishes to. Perhaps the biggest quirk of his abilities, however, is that he doesn't actually require any food, water, or oxygen to survive, thanks to his vast reserves of energy. Check him out for yourself in his first appearance in 1964's Avengers number 9. Number 5. Sersi. A member of the Eternals, Sersi easily ranks as one of the group's most overpowered members, and, in my opinion, is one of the most underrated characters in the Marvel Universe in terms of ability. Like many other members of the Eternals, she is tens of thousands of years old, meaning she has seen quite a bit in her time. She officially joins the Earth's mightiest heroes in Avengers number 314, partially due to her desire to protect humanity, but mostly because of her fondness for Captain America. Possessing the strength, speed, stamina, and combat skills and invulnerability you'd expect from the Eternals, it's said that the only way to actually kill Sersi for good is to scatter her atoms about. Also similar to her fellow Eternals, her ability to fire cosmic blasts from her hands, Circe is somewhat unique amongst her peers due to her strong telekinetic abilities. What cements Circe as one of Marvel's most powerful heroes, however, is her incredible transmutation ability, allowing her to reshape matter at a molecular level. She is considered a 5th level adept at transmutation, which is also the highest possible level, and she has used her power to turn a deviant to rubber, give the Avengers gills, and even disintegrate air itself. It also seems that she can create sentient life, bringing stone statues to life and turning inanimate objects into various animals and creatures at will. Check out her immense power for yourself, starting with her first appearance in 1976's Eternals, number 3. Number 4. Gilgamesh. Often referred to as the Forgotten One, Gilgamesh's heroic exploits have become so legendary over the millennia that he's often referred to as heroes of myth, like Hercules and Gilgamesh, which explains why he just goes by Gilgamesh. He is one of, if not the strongest member of the hidden group of superpowered beings known as the Eternals, an ancient race of genetically altered humans created by the Celestials. Alongside his teammates, he helps shield humanity from the vicious deviants, though Gilgamesh seems to have a very soft spot for just protecting the people of Earth. He joined the Avengers in a time where their membership was at an all-time low, and although his time with them was pretty short-lived, he was an absolutely vital member of the team. While all Eternals are born with an inherent set of superhuman abilities such as super strength, Gilgamesh's strength far exceeds that of his counterparts, making him one of the most physically powerful characters in all of Marvel, with strength comparable to that of Hercules, Thor, and other godlike beings. As a result of countless millennia of training, Gilgamesh is also an extremely skilled hand-to-hand combat fighter, which, coupled with his imperviousness to damage, makes him one of Marvel's most dangerous characters. As is the case with most other Eternals, Gilgamesh can also emit deadly beams of light, heat, and physical force from his hands and eyes, and can manipulate matter to a limited degree. Give his story a read for yourself, starting with 1977's Eternals, number 13. Number 3. Squirrel Girl. Born to Dorian and Maureen Green, Doreen Green suffered a modification in her genes for unknown reasons that granted her squirrel-like abilities, which manifested predominantly in the form of a prehensile tail. When her parents consulted with a doctor, it was determined that Doreen wasn't actually a mutant, even though it was just kind of assumed that she was. At the age of 10, she discovered that she could communicate with squirrels, and that's how she met Monkey Joe, who encouraged her to use her powers and abilities for good. Her full arsenal of powers is kind of like Spider-Man's if you think about it, but with squirrel attributes as opposed to, Spidey powers. She has super strength, superhuman jaw strength, a regenerative healing factor, and of course her 3-foot prehensile tail that she can basically use as an extra limb. The best thing about Squirrel Girl though, in my opinion, and honestly everyone else's that I've talked to, is that she is so immensely kind and friendly, which somehow makes her more powerful. At one point, Doreen hijacked an Iron Man suit to head outside the stratosphere and face off against Galactus, and in true Squirrel Girl fashion, she is able to instead convince Galactus into letting her find a tasty alternative to consuming the planet Earth like a Thin Mint, getting him to admit that all the people in skyscrapers would just, hurt his mouth. She befriended the Planet Devourer, and that is absolutely nuts. In addition to Galactus, she has also quote-unquote defeated Kraven the Hunter and Doctor Doom, something that not every hero can say. Check out Doreen for yourself in her first appearance in 1991's Marvel Superheroes Volume 2. Number 2. The Sentry. Robert Reynolds, aka Sentry, aka Marvel's dark answer to Superman. He's a superhero with a ton of powers, but he is constantly at war with the dark force within called the Void. So basically, when a middle-aged Bob remembers he was once the superhero of the century, he returns to his heroic life. When he finds out the Void, his archenemy, is returning to Earth. However, most of Earth's population has no memory of him. It's later revealed that the Void is a second personality within him, and that both personas have been erased to protect himself and the world. His powers come from a special version of the super soldier formula called the Golden Sentry Serum, and has given him the power of immortality alongside superhuman levels of speed, strength, agility, and stamina, as well as teleportation, flight, and just so much more. Sentry has been seen easily lifting 100 tons with little to no effort, meaning that if he really pushes himself, his weight limit could be, like 110 tons or even 150. Honestly, who knows, this is just speculation, but when you take into consideration all the additional powers that Sentry has, we think being in the top 5 of Marvel's strongest heroes is a fair ranking. Throughout the Marvel Universe, Sentry has been seen as a member of the New Avengers, the Mighty Avengers, the Dark Avengers, and even the Horsemen of Death, and every time he has been a vital member to the group. Check him out for yourself, starting with 2000 Sentry, number 1. And number 1, Franklin Richards. Sure, his parents are strong, Sue and Reed Richards, very strong, I think we all know that, but who knew that combining their mutagenic genes would create the most powerful being in the cosmos? Franklin Richards is a mutant who is classified as a rare and Omega level character. His most powerful characteristic is that he can literally warp reality as well as control the fundamental forces of the universe. He is one of the strongest mutants to ever exist, with powers equal to that of Celestials, meaning he is on par with literal gods. Unlike most other mutants, his powers actually manifested before puberty, and needless to say, wielding such a power at an early age gave cause for concern from his family. But Franklin has proven more than capable of using his powers since, and even made the Devourer of Worlds Galactus his herald. Honestly, feats of strength don't get any more bold than that, and given how Franklin still has plenty of room left to grow, it stands to reason that he could become not just the universe's most powerful hero, but its most powerful inhabitant as well. There's also an alternate universe where Franklin obtains immortality alongside all his original powers, which is just insane. It's just insane if you think about it. Check out his story for yourself in his first appearance in 1968's Fantastic Four Annual, number 6.
Coming in at number 10, we have Taskmaster. Let's kick off the list with a villain who is pretty well known and is actually going to be the main villain in the next upcoming Black Widow movie. At face value, sure, Taskmaster is pretty strong, but I wouldn't put him in the ranks of strongest of all time. After all, he can still be killed by conventional means, unlike Galactus or Thanos. But what makes Taskmaster so powerful is his ability to train others. On more than one occasion, Taskmaster has been in charge of training armies to fight against heroes. Now, because Taskmaster has his super drug, which allows him to have insanely powerful recall, and he is able to mimic and decipher other people's combat styles, he can use this to prepare thousands of people to take down heroes in the perfect way. He would know exactly how to fight them, and he can display all of their techniques because he already knows them. So it's not so much that Taskmaster himself is massively powerful, but it's the way that he can apply his skills. Coming in at number 9, we have The Natural, a brand new villain on the scene, so the potential of their own power is still unknown, but it would seem at the very least they can beat the hell out of some of the most skilled heroes that are already calling themselves Avengers. In the first issue, where we see The Natural take center stage, he comes into conflict with Bucky Barnes and the Falcon. The two of them are veterans of the hero world and should be able to take out a new villain with no problem. I mean, at first glance, The Natural looks like a 20-year-old with the brightest blonde hair and eyes you have ever seen. He looks like he should be on a K-pop poster, not beating the hell out of two members of the Avengers. Well, that's exactly what he does. And before we can get any more details about who this brand new villain is, he has to run off and we have no idea where he went. I think it's safe to say that this guy could be one of the Avengers' most skilled enemies in the future. Coming in at number 8, we have Stiltman. I mean, the name alone is super lame. You couldn't call yourself anything cooler like Dr. Tall or Towerfoot or Lanky Larry, anything. But even though Stiltman is super lame at first glance and doesn't have any real powers outside of his super suit, he is actually quite strong. When you go through the list of heroes that he has gone toe to toe with and actually created a lot of issues for, he actually starts to look like a little bit of a big shot. Mind you, he's not going to be ripping down reality anytime soon, but he might just kick Wolverine in the head so hard he gets a concussion for like 30 seconds. Coming in at number 7, we have Bessie the Hell Cow. I mean, we have to throw Bessie on here just because your average comic fan would have never heard of her. It definitely caught me off guard. How do you make a cow that is so powerful it constantly comes back from the dead and has been a villainous threat for nearly 300 years? Well, you have Dracula bite the cow and drain the blood out of it. Then the cow dies, then the cow comes back to life as a vampire cow and goes on the loose trying to murder anyone that gets in its way. And this cow has all the regular tropes that vampires have, so you better believe that she's going to be drinking blood all the time. Also, she has the ability to move her soul into another cow's body if she gets killed, so in a way she is immortal. And what if she can move her soul into another creature's body, like something even more powerful? Coming in at number 6, we have the Hulk. Wait, why is Hulk on this list? He's a hero and we all know how strong he is. Well, I threw him on the list because even though his strength is known, his changes to the side of villainy are probably not as well renowned. There is an entire comic run, Planet Hulk, where the Hulk is banished from Earth and was supposed to live out his days on a desolate planet, but then he ends up becoming the king of a faraway world and then returns to Earth to lay waste to all the Avengers, and holy moly does he do a number on them. And there have been several times when the Hulk has turned his back on his pals because of one of his famous mood swings, or even became their enemy at a crucial moment where they needed him to be clear-headed. In the end, Hulk is only a hero for as long as his patience lasts, which is usually pretty long but can shift at any moment. Bruce Banner. We might as well follow one half with the other. Now, even though Hulk is way stronger than Banner, Dr. Banner is way more unexpected of a villain. I mean, he's been a certified hero right up until Jason Aaron had his run with him on the Hulk. This was where the Hulk had Dr. Doom separate him from Banner for good. Now you think this would be better for the both of them, but but turns out Banner goes insane without the Hulk floating around in his head, and Banner as a villain is pretty powerful. He starts a Dr. Moreau Island making a bunch of Hulk animal hybrids. An army of Hulk creatures is enough to make any member of the Avengers sweat, and on top of all this, he's one of the smartest people on planet Earth, so even though it hasn't happened a lot, when Banner goes bad, everyone should be shook. Coming in at number 4, we have Mojo. I don't know if Mojo is more unexpected or forgotten, but I think he slides perfectly into this spot on the list. Mojo is basically what happens when you give a CEO supreme cosmic power without any laws. Mojo is the ruler of his world and basically runs everything like a TV executive, creating more and more outlandish ways to create entertainment for his people without a shred of morality. But Mojo has been able to capture some of the strongest heroes and force them to compete in battles of strength so he can keep his ratings at an all-time high. Coming at number 3, we have Venom. Once again, another villain who packs a punch but usually operates in the realm of manageability. Like if Venom is on the loose, you don't call in the Avengers A-Team. You send in the East Coast Avengers to deal with them and then you call it a day. But here's the thing, symbiotes can sometimes get stronger over time and their strength is very much attached to the person they bond to. For instance, there was one occasion where Venom combined with Red Hulk and Ghost Rider to make one of the most incredible comic book fantasies I could ever dream of. So for his day-to-day endeavors, Venom is a cool villain with an amazing backstory and a decent power level, but when you get into some of the all-time most powerful things that he has ever done, he is pretty amazing. Coming into the number 2 spot, we have Juggernaut. The first YouTube video I ever watched was a dubbed episode of X-Men, and I still remember it. It highlighted the Juggernaut in the best way, but even though we know the Juggernaut is strong as hell, he's not the strongest in the universe kind of strong. He's able to take on some of the stronger Marvel heroes like Thor, but he can also be bested by the likes of Spider-Man. But here's the thing, the Juggernaut's power level tends to fluctuate a lot. He gets his juice from the Crimson Gem of Sidorak, which is basically powered by a god from another dimension. On one occasion, Kane Marco, aka the Juggernaut, was able to tap into the full potential of this gem and became a being so powerful he could crack through realities with a punch. He was also 100 feet tall, so as you can imagine, he was quite the tough villain to take down. In fact, if he never lost touch with the true strength of that gem, he might have been supreme overlord of all the Marvel universe. And coming into the number 1 spot, we have Absorbing Man. At face value, Absorbing Man is a brute who can suck in some metal and punch dudes in the face. It's a very simple skill. But here's the thing about Absorbing Man, his powers are actually magical. So that means he can absorb things that work outside of the realm of reality. He is able to absorb energy from magical weapons, and he's also been able to absorb Ultron. Wait, what? Yeah, you know that powerful robot that almost killed the Avengers like 100 times and was actually successful on a few occasions in other timelines? Well, Absorbing Man sucked him in and then was able to absorb knowledge and basically became the most powerful creature on the planet by far. So who would have thought that some low tier criminal would be able to get to such a high power level? That is way over 9,000.
Number 10, Carrion. Carrion is the clone of Miles Warren, aka the Jackal. After Jackal's apparent death, he was abandoned and as such continued to develop at an accelerated rate while in stasis. When he awoke, he was therefore kinda like a living corpse. Despite being twisted and kinda gross, Carrion for a brief moment in time appeared to be a powerful Spider-Man villain. Carrion was a superpowered version of the Jackal who possessed a kind of death touch which allowed him to disintegrate organic matter, such as Peter's webbing. He also fought with a substance known as Crimson Dust, which could be used to knock out his opponents or give them acid-like burns. While appearing as a shambling corpse and only lasting a few issues, Carrion was a strangely powerful enemy. Number 9, Kane Parker. Definitely one of the weaker of the strong, but still, despite the fact that Kane had a degenerative disorder and was kind of a mess when he first hit the scene, he's still got some pretty unique abilities that managed to make him pretty powerful. Also, just because you're kind of a broken clone in person doesn't mean that you can't also be powerful. Unique abilities that Kane came with are the Mark of Kane and his former precognitive version of Spider Sense. The Mark of Kane is an ability that allows him to burn others with the touch of his palm. In reality, this is actually the little hooks in his skin that allow him and other spider folks to wall crawl. But Kane's are a lot more intense basically, allowing him to burn his opponents with his touch or use his Mark of Kane to cut his hair, which would actually be a remarkably useful ability to have had over the past year or so. I have not had my hair cut in months personally. His Spidey sense used to give him precognitive visions which drove him mad, but also gave him glimpses into the future, a very different kind of Spidey sense. And friends, before we move on to our number 8 spot, just a quick reminder, if you love this list and you want to learn about even more Marvel clones, let us know by being sure to give this video a thumbs up and comment down below below and let us know. Number 8. Morlun. Morlun was the only inheritor we know of to escape the fate of being turned into an adorable psychic vampire baby who would be raised to be good. He was once the leader of the inheritors and is known for being a deadly opponent of Peter Parker and basically all of the Spider-Verse. Initially, he and his fellow inheritors were defeated during the events of Spider-Verse, but ultimately returned to Earth 616 after Genix, Morlun's brother, managed to hack into Otto Octavius's aka Superior Spider-Man's database and upload the souls of the villains who were currently trapped in Earth 3145 into Otto's spare clone bodies, granting them access again to the main continuity universe. Like the other inheritors, Morlun enjoys feeding on the life force energy of totems, which is why he generally preys on spider folk from across the multiverse, who we'd come to learn in the comics were all connected via the Great Web due to their status as spider totems, changing the story of basically all of them really and making them into destined heroes in origins as opposed to accidental heroes. Morlun was temporarily depowered by Sin Eater, who absorbed his powers, but after Sin Eater's death he got them back, so he's kinda right back up to the terrifying power levels that make him such a fearsome enemy and skilled hunter. Number 7. Wolverine. Laura Kinney currently goes by the alias of Wolverine, taking after her genetic old man, Logan, who is also currently Wolverine as well. You can never have too many Wolverines on Krakoa apparently. Typically though, we have come to know Laura under the alias of X-23, the codename she was given when she was produced as a weaponized clone version of the original Wolverine. Despite being a female clone of Wolverine, Laura is also thought of by Logan as his daughter. She was made using the genetic material of Wolverine and Sarah Kinney. Her mother was actually one of the scientists who was working hard to help Weapon X create a clone version of Logan so that they could repeat the adamantium bonding process, creating their own super soldier. Sarah was also punished for going along with creating a female clone against orders after all the male attempts had failed, and as such was made to be Laura's natural mother as well, having to carry the child to term in her own womb and giving birth to baby Laura herself. Laura's power levels are similar to Logan's, and she is also a highly experienced and trained fighter and assassin. Number 6. Scarlet Spider. Who could forget all the Spidey clones out there? After Clone Saga, I know I sure can't, and I don't think anyone else can either, because we got some genuinely awesome characters out of all that cloning that the Jackal did. One such fan favorite is Ben Reilly, the Scarlet Spider. Ben was at one point believed to be the original and Peter the copy in the comics, and for a time he actually returned to New York and led his life as Peter, with both thinking that he was the real Spider-Man. In the end, however, the truth came out after Ben sacrificed himself to save Peter Parker, and it was revealed that this confusion was all a part of an elaborate and villainous plot to ruin both Spider-Men's lives. Ben, however, would return after the Jackal collected his remains and brought him back to life, and that wouldn't be the last time he'd die and be resurrected either. Like the original, Ben happens to have immense strength and similar powers to that of Peter Parker. Ben is also known for having some intellectual and invention know-how, and for his stingers and his impact webbing. Number 5. Stepford Cuckoos. The Stepford Cuckoos are the genetically engineered clone daughters of Emma Frost. They were created using her genetic material and made to basically be 5 different versions of her. Together they share a hive mind and were initially created with the sole purpose of being used as a weapon by the Weapon Plus program. While Emma Frost was in a comatose state, John Sublime harvested over 1,000 eggs from her to experiment with and ultimately created the Stepford Cuckoos. While thousands of clones were created, only 5 were released into the world by Sublime and the Weapon Plus program. Their names, as we've come to know them, are Esme, Sophie, Celeste, Mindy, and Phoebe. Later on, 1, then 2 of the sisters would die, causing them to take up the team names 4-in-1 and then 3-in-1. Actually, Stepford Cuckoos wasn't a name that they originally wanted, it was one that was given to them by other people. They actually wanted to be known originally as 5-in-1, just didn't stick. With the resurrection protocol in effect on Krakoa though, the 2 sisters the Cuckoos had lost previously have now been brought back to life, and now all 5 are together again and residing on Krakoa. Number 4. Madeline Pryor. Some people continue to speculate on just how powerful Madeline Pryor really is, but I believe she should be on the same level as Jean Grey, in theory at least. Madeline Pryor is the clone of Jean Grey, despite the fact that every character seemed to dismiss their exact one-for-one appearance and similarity. Maddie would end up stealing Scott Summers' heart and become his wife after the death of Jean. I wonder what drew him to her. The two would live a somewhat happy married life, but only briefly. Eventually, Jean Grey returned, back from the dead, or rather back from her comatose state, and Scott would choose to return to his hero life, unable to stay away with Jean back, abandoning his then wife and son. Madeline became intensely lonely and depressed in his absence, and when she learned of her true origins, that she was a clone of Jean, made using a piece of the Phoenix Force by Mr. Sinister, she broke. This psychotic break woke within her a power and dark side, which ultimately led her to transform into the villain that we'd come to know as the Goblin Queen. Number 3. Genesis. Genesis is more commonly known as Evan Sabiner, the clone of Apocalypse. He was created and raised by Phantom X in The World, raised to be good instead of evil, making Evan more a hero, where the older version of Apocalypse was of course usually a villain. When Archangel as the Horseman of Death attempted to rise up and take Apocalypse's place after his demise, Evan was then unleashed on the world, the secret of his existence revealed. He proved to be invaluable in that fight against Archangel, allowing Warren to be successfully defeated. Evan has all the power of Apocalypse, but is simply just younger than him, so the only thing he really lacks at this point is experience. It is believed his powers and strength will eventually come to at least match that of the original Apocalypse. He has the potential to have all the powers of Apocalypse, depending on, of course, his own evolutionary path. So he might end up with some different powers, who knows. Number 2. Strife. Of course, clones have to be evil generally, and Strife of course is no exception to that trope. He is the clone of Nathan Summers, aka Cable, who ended up becoming evil and at one point making a ton of people think that Cable himself was evil, as they didn't yet know about Strife's existence. Strife is a clone of Nathan who does not struggle with the TO virus, meaning he doesn't have to funnel power to fend it off. Strife was created as a clone of Nathan when it was uncertain if the techno-organic or TO virus might consume the child and possibly kill him. Strife, however, would later get his name and much of his personality from the mutant villain Apocalypse, who kidnapped him and raised him to become his weapon. Strife is an Omega level mutant. Number 1. Omega of the Thanosi. Omega was acknowledged as being the most terrifying clone of himself that Thanos had made. He belonged to the Thanosi and was made of the combined DNA of Thanos and Galactus. So in case you've ever wondered what it would be like if Thanos and Galactus had a baby, well, here you go. Omega, however, was rumored to be twice as strong as Galactus, with the addition of as much power and capability as Thanos. However, he wasn't believed to be quite as smart or crafty, thankfully. Still, after he got loose, it took a pretty crazy team up to take him down that featured Thanos, Adam Warlock, Gamora, Pip, Doctor Strange, Moondragon, Spider-Man, and Janice Vell's Captain Marvel. That's a lot of people to take down one villain, I'm just saying.
In at 10, Punisher. Lieutenant Francis, or Frank Castle, also known as the Punisher, is a former Italian-American US Marine who served in multiple tours of duty, including the Synagogue War. This bravery in combat earned him the Bronze Star, Silver Star, and 4 Purple Hearts. Tragedy struck though when his wife Maria and children Lisa and Frank Jr. were killed after witnessing a mafia hit. Consumed by grief and driven by vengeance, Frank transformed into the Punisher, sporting a distinctive head skull on his chest, and he made it his life's mission to eradicate organized crime in all of its forms. Armed with cutting-edge weaponry, he wages a relentless war against criminals as just his own self, like a lone wolf, drawing upon his combat skills, expertise in guerrilla and urban warfare, and sharp destructive tactics. The Punisher adopts very hostile means of taking out the mafia and hunts down those who he deems responsible for eliminating his family. But yeah, dude's a dark hero, unless he's having food fights with Archie Andrews, which actually happened. In at 9, Black Widow. Natasha Romanoff's early life is the subject of varying accounts. One version tells of a fire in Stalingrad in 1928 that consumed the building where infant Natasha and her mother resided. In a desperate act, Natasha's mother threw her out the window to safety, where she was caught by a Russian soldier named Ivan Petrovich. Ivan became her steadfast guardian and foster father throughout her life. Another account places the fire during the Battle of Stalingrad in autumn of 1942. While under Ivan's protection, Natasha was abducted by Baron von Strucker and taken to the Hand, an organization of assassins in Madripoor. However, it was revealed that Natasha had been working undercover, following orders from an undisclosed source. Her abduction served as a ruse to infiltrate the Hand and assassinate their leader, the Onin. Logan, also known as Wolverine, intervened and killed the Onin instead, simultaneously freeing Captain America, but
Yeah, which is weird because then Natasha would then work with Captain America, despite being, yeah, it's a whole thing. The timelines are weird when you have super soldier and like Wolverine powers and you don't really age. In it ate Black Cat. Felicia Hardy's father, Walter Hardy, was a renowned cat burglar who instilled in his daughter's mindset a sense of never settling for mediocrity. He encouraged her to pursue her passions wholeheartedly, urging her to aim for being a basketball player rather than just a cheerleader if it was her true passion. During her freshman year in college, Felicia attended a party that turned into a harrowing experience where she was almost attacked by a drunken fellow student in a bathroom. Fortunately, another student named Ryan intervened, saving her from the assault, and from that, Felicia and Ryan formed a close bond, spending a lot of time together. However, the friendship took a dark turn when Ryan insisted that it was time to take their relationship to a different level, disregarding Felicia's objections. Refusing to be a victim again, Felicia rejected the idea and made a decision to seek revenge against her assailant, even if it meant facing dire consequences. She dedicated herself to intense training in various combat techniques and acrobatics, setting aside her studies, and then after months of preparation, she embarked on a path of vengeance driven by her determination to bring justice to her attacker. And while she is sometimes depicted as a villain, she does often help Spider-Man when it's for the greater good. But if there's any money to be made in it, Felicia will typically want to make the money. But I mean, I guess I can understand that. We love a girl with spunk. And it's 7 Elektra. Elektra spent years working as a bounty hunter and hired assassin. During a contract in New York City, she discovered that the blind adventurer of Daredevil was actually Matt Murdock. They then joined forces to combat Bullseye, who was suffering from a deteriorating mental state caused by a tumor. While Daredevil did disapprove of Elektra's profession, their connection remained strong, and after escaping from Pleasant Hill, Elektra sought redemption for the lives that she had taken by applying to rejoin S.H.I.E.L.D. She aimed to cleanse her conscience and make amends, and her initial assignment involved taking charge of Phil Coulson's former team. Yes, that Phil Coulson. As a part of her duties, she was tasked with apprehending Coulson for his interference with Captain Marvel's plans regarding the Inhuman profiler Ulysses Kane and his predictive justice. Elektra's involvement also aided S.H.I.E.L.D. director Maria Hill, yes, Robin Scherbatsky, in uncovering a mole within Coulson's team, who was eventually revealed to be Leo Fitz. And at 6, Hawkeye. Clint Barton, also known as Hawkeye, is a highly skilled marksman and archer from America, where he started his journey initially as a circus performer and minor supervillain, but eventually became a valued member of the Avengers. Despite occasional conflicts with the team, Clint always returned to fight alongside his fellow Avengers against any threat, cause, you know, yeah. Dude kinda has like a Robin-esque origin story too. Being raised in a circus and trained by criminals, Clint still overcame a troubled youth to become one of Earth's greatest heroes. He is widely recognized for his exceptional mastery of a bow and arrow, displaying extreme precision and never really seeming to miss unless he means to. Throughout his career, he formed a strong friendship with Black Widow, aka Natasha Romanoff, and was married to fellow superhero Mockingbird, with whom he co-founded the West Coast Avengers. But I guess they don't film in Vancouver. Haha, it's a joke. Halfway through into number 5, Moon Knight. Mark Spector, operating as the vigilante Moon Knight, had a remarkable journey. Once a mercenary left for dead in the desert, he was granted a second chance when he was resurrected by the moon god Khonshu. Becoming Khonshu's champion and high priest, Moon Knight took on the role of a nocturnal avenger, safeguarding those who traversed in the shadows. However, Mark's life is not without complexity. He grapples with dissociative identity disorder, with different personalities such as the wealthy Stephen Grant and the taxi driver Jake Lockley. During his early days, Moon Knight fought crime with the assistance of a network of allies, including his loyal friend Frenchie Duchamp, the resourceful Bertrand Crawley, and Port of Diner owner Gina Landers. While Mark mostly operates as a lone crusader, he has been associated with various superhero teams throughout his career. He served as a member of the West Coast Avengers, the Secret Avengers, and the Heroes for Hire. But yeah, Moon Knight is kind of a dope thing that was actually pretty niche until the series came out anyway. And at 4, Deadpool. Yeah. Okay, you knew this was gonna happen. Wade's recollections of his childhood are filled with conflicting memories. At times, he remembers his father abandoning his pregnant mother, leading to her directing anger towards him until Wade grew up and started hurting her instead. Or on the other hand, he's also recalled his mother passing away when he was 5, leaving him in the care of his father, who was a military officer. Nonetheless, Wade's account of his father being an absent figure who told bad jokes and left him with his mother when he was young kinda contradicted earlier memories, but yeah, it's Deadpool. you can't really believe anything he says, but you also kind of have to believe everything he says, otherwise you have nothing. It's kind of like FNAF in that way. But his mother, in that version, sought solace in humor, alcohol, and home shopping networks. Kind of like every aunt on TV ever. Wade believed that running away from home would spare his mother from spending what little money they had on him, but in a surprising twist, it was eventually revealed that Wade's parents were still together and living in Canada. They had preserved his room just as he had left it, but upon returning as an adult, Wade failed to recognize the house, his parents, or his own room. So yeah, that's complicated. That sounds like a Disney Channel original movie. I'm not even kidding. I feel like this is actually a Disney Channel movie plot. In at 3, Captain America. Steve Rogers, also known as Captain America, the first Avenger, faced numerous health issues that led to his rejection by the US Army during World War II. However, he seized the opportunity to volunteer for Project Rebirth, a program that administered the super soldier serum developed by Dr. Abraham Erskine. This transformative serum greatly enhanced his frail physique, something that I could use, elevating him to the peak of human physicality. Known as the Sentinel of Liberty, Captain America fought alongside his closest ally Bucky Barnes and the Invaders, aiding the Allies in achieving victory in the war. However, his fate took a turn when he was lost at sea and remained frozen in suspended animation for several decades. I don't know how that could happen in an ocean, but okay, that's fine. Suspension of belief, it's comics. Eventually, he thawed out in the modern era and then continued his valiant struggle alongside a new team of allies, the Avengers. Captain America's unwavering loyalty lies not with politicians or governments, but with the timeless principles of freedom, equality, and justice that embody the American dream, which is kind of contradictive because that means that he would be loyal to the American government because it's the American dream, but oh well, I digress. But yeah, he has superpowers and he's a street hero apparently, so there you go, blame the wiki not. Penultimately, in at number 2, Spider-Man. Yep, Spider-Man's on this list too. Spider-Man, often known as a lone vigilante, has become an integral part of the superhero community and has forged strong alliances with various teams like the Fantastic Four and Avengers. Along his journey, he's faced formidable adversaries including Doc Ock, Electro, Kraven the Hunter, Mysterio, Venom, Green Goblin, who's obviously his arch nemesis who actually resulted in the death of Gwen Stacy. But in his civilian life, Peter's just kind of a dude. He's not really supposed to be that handsome, he's not cool, he's not fun, but he does actually have a support network that includes Mary Jane Watson, Harry Osborn, Flash Thompson, and at times J. Jonah Jameson, despite him literally trashing Spider-Man at all times, but again, he doesn't know, so it's a toss-up. But following the ups and downs of his startup company, Parker Industries, Peter had to balance his Spider-Man duties with returning to college, all while becoming the target of a malevolent entity known as Kindred, which tormented him relentlessly. But again, somehow, the dude has to pull his punches, otherwise he'll just kill someone by flicking them, and he's considered a street hero because he fights thugs, I guess. Dude's been to space. Dude has had the power cosmic. How is he a street level villain or superhero? Whatever. It doesn't matter. How is he street level anything? Whatever. Moving on. And finally, in at number 1, Daredevil. Matt Murdock, blinded as a child but gifted with heightened senses, fights for the underprivileged in New York's Hell's Kitchen as a zealous lawyer during the day and as the agile and skilled martial artist Daredevil at night. Raised by his father, an aging boxer, Matt was encouraged to pursue education and intellectual pursuits rather than relying on physical strength. However, after witnessing his father's death at the hands of gangsters who demanded that he throw a fight, Matt swears to fight injustice both in the courtroom and out of it. Initially portrayed as a swashbuckling, carefree adventurer, Daredevil was later reimagined by Frank Miller in the 1980s as a tormented hero who suffers a series of tragedies. Miller introduced the character of Elektra, Matt's first and greatest love, who ultimately became an assassin and was killed by Daredevil's enemy Bullseye. But despite his pain and suffering, Matt continues to fight for justice, which is a good thing. But also, I realized this recently, Daredevil and Matt Murdock being blind and Superman's glasses are the same disguise. There you go. I've ruined your day. And if you want to know more about things that are probably going to ruin your day, be sure you click on the video that's popping up on screen. What a good pitch!
Number 10. Captain Marvel. In the comic book Avengers issue 197, published in 1980, Carol Danvers, who was then known known as Miss Marvel, discovers that she is pregnant. However, she has no recollection of how it happened, and the baby grows at an alarming rate. Shortly after that, in Avengers issue 200, Carol gives birth to the baby, who also grows up at an alarming rate, and names himself Marcus. The Avengers seem excited about the birth despite the bizarre circumstances of it, and Carol is made to feel like she is basically overreacting by not sharing in their enthusiasm and excitement for her. As Marcus grows, it is revealed that he is actually the son of Immortus, a ruler of Limbo, not Magic's Limbo, but a different Limbo. Immortus, by the way, is one of the alternate timeline incarnations of Kang the Conqueror. Immortus had impregnated a woman he had plucked from time, Marcus's mother, and Marcus was trapped in Limbo until he could be born on Earth. Marcus had basically brought Carol to Limbo, specifically mentioning that she actually reminded him of his mother, a little weird, and used charm and his father's subtle manipulation devices and methods to impregnate her so that he could be born on Earth. Yikes. In the end, despite the large piles of red flags, many piles of red flags everywhere, Carol decides randomly that she actually feels empathy for Marcus, not knowing whether this is coming from herself or actually from his influence over her, and her friends and colleagues, her family, the Avengers, just basically smile and wave goodbye as she rides off into the sunset with the man who she is most definitely a victim of. Her lover turned son turned sort of love once more, Marcus Immortus. Oh boy. And friends, before we move on to our next spot on this list, if you love what we do here at Top 10 Nerd, and if you love when we talk about some of the more questionable things that have been done in comics, be sure to let us know by clicking that subscribe button. Number 9. Photon. While Monica Rambeau may finally be seeing some appreciation in the comics today, this wasn't always the case. I would say she started off with a bang in the comics, but then shortly after was kind of shafted multiple times over. Needless to say, she did recently get a 5-issue mini written by Eve Ewing, no relation to Al Ewing by the way, which I am super excited to read, but I personally think Monica deserves a whole ongoing series all her own. That's how awesome and powerful she is. Number 8. Rogue. So I'm not going to lie, I actually love Rogue's weakness. Former weakness now, I guess. Rogue was one of my favorite characters growing up, and I think what I loved about her so much was the tragedy of her story and her powers. But what's even more, I love the way that Rogue overcame them in the comics. Still, in overcoming her fears to gain full control over her powers, Rogue actually became kinda harder to write, I think. She's just honestly too powerful. This is why I feel like we don't get as many Rogue-focused stories these days in the comics. Sure, she and Gambit have their team-up series going on, but I was really hoping for a Rogue solo story during the days of Krakoa. Jonathan Hickman planned to write one, but ultimately decided against it when he agreed to hand over creative control to his X-Men team, as opposed to staying in charge of the main plot of the Krakoa era as the head of X-Desk. I still really want that Hickman Rogue story, and I'm hoping that we get it, because yeah, I feel like there's so much more we could do with Rogue in the comics. Number 7. Jean Grey. Despite being written as a powerhouse in the comics, Jean has a long history of weird choices being made for her character. And also initially she was basically just written to be a damsel in distress for a lot of the early days of the X-Men. She has constantly been killed off, in some cases to advance the story of her male heroic counterparts, whether that be motivating them to take some action or simply kind of freeing them from their romantic obligation to her. Number 6. Wasp. Janet Van Dyne. In the Ultimate Universe, Janet wasn't treated very well, but I'd also argue in the main continuity, Janet has had it, honestly, pretty rough. Initially, she was kind of like the sidekick to Ant-Man, and then it was revealed that he was not mentally stable, meaning that Janet, as his wife, had to put up with a lot, considering that Hank was later believed to be undiagnosed bipolar. Not blaming Hank for his own mental illness here, but just acknowledging that as a result, Janet had a lot that she had to live with as his partner, and cope with. Eventually, the two do divorce, and then from a hero's perspective, Janet kind of slowly starts to fade away as Hank becomes less and less relevant. Number 5. Iska the Unbeaten. Iska is a super interesting character. On one hand, she's extremely powerful and can never lose. She can even potentially have her power utilized to manipulate the stakes of other competitions that she is pulled into herself. However, this also implies that there are times when she has zero control over her powers, in the sense that she cannot influence the result of an unbalanced battle. In fact, her powers will pull her to serve the side that will be victorious, regardless of whether or not she wants to, in terms of what her mind or her heart says does to her. This means that Iska has been forced to turn her back on her own people, the mutants of Arakko, more than once. She's also had to fight against her own family and colleagues before as a result. Although the one thing she can control at times is how she fights in a battle, which I think is interesting. Meaning if she has the option, she can basically try to fight others involved as opposed to those that she's close to. Despite the fact that she has done her best by choosing her opponents to help mitigate how she might be used to turn the tide in a battle, she still is sometimes painted unfairly, I would say, as a villain, when really she is a strong warrior who simply sometimes has no say in terms of her allegiances thanks to her powers. I really hope we get to see more of her and get to dive more into how being forced to turn on her allies at times has truly, probably deeply affected her. Number 4. Wasp, Nadia Van Dyne. Janet even got replaced basically by her adoptive daughter, a younger version of the Wasp, Nadia Van Dyne, who was actually Hank's biological daughter from his previous marriage, who, well, he basically never knew existed. Nadia returned to the US after escaping the Russian Red Room, only to find out that Hank had actually died. She ended up bonding with Janet and ultimately taking up the Wasp mantle with her blessing, also taking her last name as well. I don't mind too much that Nadia is also now the Wasp. I just wish that Janet could also remain relevant while this was going on. In fact, despite Nadia also being a cool new character, I don't even think that she has stayed very relevant since her very recent introduction to the comic, which is unfortunate as well. Wasp is so cool, but yet we can't have any Wasps that are super important lately. Number 3. Madeline Pryor. I'm sure many of you at this point know how I feel about Maddie, but for those who don't, Madeline Pryor is basically the evil clone of Jean Grey, who initially wasn't evil at all. She's also been known before as the Goblin Queen. However, the fact that Maddie was always shafted and then eventually realized that the choices made in her life were manipulated and orchestrated into happening by Mr. Sinister prompted her to basically have a mental breakdown, honestly pretty reasonable, and turn on those who she had once called her allies and friends. That's when she ends up becoming the Goblin Queen. Number 2. Scarlet Witch. M-Day has to have been one of the worst moments in mutant history. M-Day happened in 2005 in the comics as a result of Scarlet Witch striking out at mutant kind after the events of House of M, where she attempted to create a reality where many heroes were happy, but after learning of its falseness, was once again rejected by all those she had actually tried to help here. Pretty devastating, especially when, while Wanda was warping reality here, she was doing so in an effort to not only defend herself, but also make herself and all of her friends happy. In fact, I would argue her friends and teammates, the Avengers, were somewhat, and in fact I would say just full on, complicit in what happened, since they never really reached out to Wanda to try and help her when she was struggling emotionally, prompting her to warp reality, which ultimately led to her wiping out almost all mutants during M-Day. And if you don't believe me that that is the case, I mean, there's literally an alternate reality where if Jessica Jones was there, pretty much none of this would have happened, so yeah. M-Day happened mainly because Wanda was striking out at her believed to be father at the time, Magneto, who she claimed loved mutant kind more than he did his own family. Wanda said the words "no more mutants," and with that small utterance, depowered or destroyed millions of mutants the world over, an action that would cement her as one of the greatest mutant villains in comics for years beyond, despite her long-standing history before this working as a hero. Number 1. Wasp Ultimates. Oh boy, probably the worst one, I would say. Pretty bad. Janet Van Dyne's death in the Ultimate Universe has to be, honestly, one of the worst things. First of all, we don't even show her enough respect to give her an on-panel death, as she drowns during the tidal wave in Ultimatum, one of the many poor victims who perished off-panel, despite, like many others, deserving an on-panel death. But really, when we're talking about those that deserved an on-panel death, Jan is really top tier. She's really high up there, especially considering Janet was actually the leader of the Ultimates at this point. So not only are we off to a bad start here, but then she also gets eaten by the Blob for some reason. It's also weird that they decided to make the Blob do this. I know he's a bad guy, I know he's a villain, but he isn't typically known to like be a cannibal anywhere else in the Marvel multiverse, pretty much ever. The Ultimate Universe had a weird and unhealthy obsession with cannibalism initially, at least, it felt like.